Great. Thank you for having me. My name's Tim. I'm an alcoholic and a number of other things as well. I qualify for a lot of different fellowships. I've got a frog in my throat, so how long I'm going to go on for will remains to be seen. My date of sobriety is the 24th of July, 1993. It's 21 when that happened, save you trying to work all of that out. If anything I say is helpful, that's great. But it might not be, and that's fine too. The reason there are thousands of meetings is because not everyone is everyone else's cup of tea. So if what I say is not your cup of tea, it's fine. Doesn't mean anyone's right or wrong. It's just the way things are. Um, if you weren't here last week, you missed step one. So for step two and three to make sense, you let's recap what step one is about. And if you're following along in your big book, that I did not know for many years that that's where they put the instructions. I literally didn't know. Maybe people told me, but I didn't get that. I missed that memo. But so I'm just going to say, it's not meant to be patronizing. That's literally where the instructions are. The trouble is, it doesn't say, here are the instructions as explicitly as that, but that's where they are. The 12 and 12, 12 Steps and 12 Traditions, great book, commentary. Um, and it fleshes out some of the instructions on 10 and 11 in particular. In the big book, uh, step two starts on page 44, and pretty much everything before that is on step one. And there's a little summary paragraph. I found really, really useful. Uh, if you've been a sponsee or you've had sponsees and you try to go through step one with a sponsee, you'll probably discover it takes a long time. It's never straightforward. It's never quick. You go back and forth. What's the truth? Who knows? How do we work this out? It can take a while, and that's fine. So page 44 is super helpful because it gives you a one sentence summary of what alcoholism is. It says, if, when you honestly want to, you find you cannot quit entirely, or if, when drinking, you have little control over the amount you take, you are probably alcoholic. Now, the truth is, if you've got one part of that, you've probably got the other. There are very few people who are compelled to drink who aren't off to the races when they start. I've met very few people who are off to the races when they drink, who don't have a habit of going back every day or on a regular basis. So most people have both sides of it. And honestly, you kind of need both sides. If you can stay away from the first drink, the fact that you're off to the races after the first drink is kind of irrelevant. And it's the same the other way around. If you're compelled to have the first drink, but you can stop at one or two, again, you don't have a problem. You're weird, but you don't have a problem. I had both. I was compelled to have the first drink. When I couldn't get alcohol, I got other substances. When I couldn't do either, I found other neat ways of wrecking my life. Let's not go into details some of you may identify. There are places you can go which will bend your mind as much as alcohol and drugs. Anyway, um, there's a line as well which is super helpful to me on step one. When we became alcoholics, crushed by a self-imposed crisis we couldn't postpone or evade. In July 1993, I would wake up in the morning thinking I was going to get through the day sober because I was going to AA. I was kind of a good boy in AA. I was pretty much doing as I was told to a certain extent. But then I'd be drunk by lunchtime, and my episodes were getting really dangerous. So my last episode with alcohol involved the tarmac of a road, a car screeching to a halt, an ambulance, a policeman, some cells. It I didn't get charged, but I talked my way out of it. But anyway, uh, I knew I was an alcoholic for a long time. I kind of knew from, I think, January 1989. I was drinking. I was living in a country where you could drink from the age of 16 legally, which was fun. So, you didn't even get into trouble. You could do whatever you wanted. Um, and I joked to people, I'm an alcoholic. I mean, I looked like, acted like one. I didn't have a problem with that. By July 1993, I had a problem with it. I couldn't postpone or evade. I needed to sort out this problem now because I might not come back from the next slip. My friend Fred, there were five of us, that's five, uh, people in AA in 1993 in London under 25. Five people in AA under 25 in London. That was it. So we knew each other. And, two are still alive. One I don't know about, and the other one is dead. Oh no, I do know about all of them. Two are still alive and sober. One is still alive and drunk, and one is dead. And the one that's dead died on the night he slipped. The one that's drunk keeps trying to come back and can't. So I had a problem I couldn't postpone or evade. Sometimes people say, AA, it's not a race, is it? Kind of is. Now, it's not a race against Susan or Bobby or whoever's sitting next to you at your home group. It's, for me, it was a race against my mind. I had to get my mind caged because it was gonna kill me. Because my mind would tell me to have a drink. I'd say, okie dokie, let's go and have a drink then. There's no effective mental defense. Um, Now, people can, let me just close the door properly. People conceive of the solution in very different ways. And that's fine. We all get to tell our own story, and our story is pretty subjective. Um, if you asked our families what really happened, you'd probably get a different story. So even our stories are pretty subjective. But sometimes I hear people say, AA works because I don't want to drink now. Um, and that's maybe true. But here's the thing. Uh, when I first joined AA, it did this amazing thing. This was in the January 1993. It did this amazing thing. I went home. I took an unopened bottle of gin. I went into the kitchen and I poured the whole thing down the sink. I mean, I could not have done that 24 hours earlier. Something fundamental had changed. I didn't want to drink. The next day, I didn't want to drink. The next day, I didn't want to drink. 6 weeks passes, suddenly I want to drink. And I had a drink. So the fact that I don't want to drink today itself is not a guarantee that I won't want to drink tomorrow. Over the last 27 years, there have been moments when my mind toyed with the idea of drugs in particular. Less so drink for some reason. The fantasy is always around drugs, usually around drugs. Sometimes that fantasy has been incredibly powerful and it's looked incredibly attractive. If you're in a huge amount of pain and your disease says to you that, some drugs would take the edge off, your disease is not lying to you. It's telling you the truth. It literally would take the edge off for a bit. I mean, for how long and what else would happen is another question. Some people say the disease lies. It also tells the truth. So, it's very tricky to deal with. Um, the solution for me, yeah, I mean, it does make life a lot easier. The fact that I almost never want to drink, I almost never want to use. These days, I almost never want to engage in those other things for which other 12-step fellowships are available. It's a mercy. But this program has given me a defense, which means that even when I want to, I don't. That's real safety. Um, I've heard people say, and I don't know if this is because they've thought it through or if it's a slip of the tongue or whatever, but people say today I have a mental defense against the first drink. Now, what the book talks about, it's very interesting. It says we had no serious and effective mental defense against the first drink. Um, And most of the time today, if you asked me, would having a drink make sense? I'd set out some reasonable argument for why not. But I don't think that's what it's about. Um, I think there's something deeper going on. I remember one particular situation about 11 years ago where someone I was very close to was mid-relapse, and it was very distressing. Uh, for him, it was very distressing for me. And the thought crossed my mind, uh, it will just be easier for everyone if I started drinking the vodka too. Now, I didn't drink the vodka. A very powerful feeling rose up inside me that said, mate, you might want to get out of there. Go, I don't care where you just go somewhere else. Get out of the situation. I didn't think it through. I didn't roll the tape forward. I was driven away. I'm going to read a little passage, because this is totally. We've got to understand, I think, what the solution is before we make a decision to turn our will over to that solution. Um, in chapter 11 of the big book, it's got some of the AA history. And it's got this situation where Bill Wilson, who's one of the co-founders of AA, um, was on very slippery ground. Um, and he feels like a drink. He sees some people drinking in a bar. He's lonely in a strange city, um, in Ohio, and he wants to drink. And his narration in chapter 11 is this. Again, it was the old insidious insanity, that first drink. It said before that, fear gripped him. He was on thin ice. Boy, have I been on thin ice a lot of my life. Seconds and inches. Now, it's so curious. It says, again, it was the old insidious insanity, that first drink. With a shiver, he turned away. He walked down the lobby to the church directory. He can still hear the bar. And then he has a thought, but what about the responsibilities, his family and the men who would die because they did not know how to get well? Ah, yes, those other alcoholics. And he phones someone eventually he finds another alcoholic to help. And AA is born. I mean, the alcoholic he finds is Dr. Bob, and that's why we're here today. But if you look at the order in which things happen, he really wants to have a drink. His mind is telling him maybe he can handle 3 drinks. He's terrified. And the solution is this. With a shiver, he turned away. The logic, the reason comes later on. The shiver comes first. It talks about a similar thing a bit earlier in the book. I think it's in chapter 3. Save for a few brief moments of temptation, the thought of drink has never returned, and at such times a great revulsion has risen up in him. Seemingly he could not drink even if he would, in the sense of even if he wanted to. God had restored his sanity. And the step 10 promises, people talk about the promises of AA, and in step 9, at the end of step 9, it says, here are the promises, blah, 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 or these extravagant promises. But there are promises associated with every step. So all through the big book, it says, this is how you take this step. If you don't take it, these are the terrible things that are going to happen. If you do take it, these are the great things that are going to happen. Yeah, stick and carrot all the way through. The carrot in step 10 is this. Same phrase. For by this time sanity will have returned. We will seldom be interested in liquor. If tempted, we recoil from it as from a hot flame. If you have the habit of getting entangled with exciting and toxic people, the same thing is, sometimes I meet people, I think, well, this will be an interesting entanglement, and I recoil from it as from a hot flame. Sometimes people try to get me into an interesting argument about something. Again, I recoil from it as from a hot flame. I'm not thinking it through. I'm not free of temptation. I'm protected. Now, there's some bad news. That promise comes after the end of step 9 and well into step 10. So you've kind of got to complete step 9 before you get to that promise. The AA fellowship, in my experience, was really effective at carrying me through that process without a drink, the process of the first 9 steps. But don't go crazy. At some point the shine is going to wear off. So I was told whatever force I had from my rock bottom when I was new, when it was really fresh, use that to power through as many of the steps as possible, because the pink cloud is going to wear off and then it's going to be much harder. So I was told, just get on with it quickly, don't dawdle, don't look back. There are lots of stories. I mean, there's one in the Bible, there's various films where, don't look back, someone looks back, disaster, that's the end of it. So I think it's the same with addiction, just rush forward with the steps. That's what I did, and it worked. So that's what's on offer. That's a solution, is some kind of, I think I would call it a spiritual defense against the first drink. And what it's like, if you've ever stood on the edge of a platform in a railway station, and a train is coming into the platform, and you know logically that the train is not going to hit you, but you stand like 1 foot further back, you move back when you feel the train coming in. It's like, and you can't override it. You almost feel your body forcing you to move back. It does not. It's smarter than you are. That's so embarrassing. It knows, don't stand near the edge. And that's the defense I have with alcohol today. It's something that overrides my mind. My mind can convince me of almost anything. Now, I don't know about you. When I got to AA, although I had a problem with drinking and with some other behavior, I had problems in every area of my life. I had emotions which drove me here and drove me there. I had no functional relationships. I couldn't work. I couldn't study. Just a complete. I was a disaster before I ever drank. When I was at school, there were people who were deployed secretly to monitor me. I was in a boarding school, secretly to monitor me for suicidal signs of my suicidal behavior. And weekly reports were written and sent back to my parents. I didn't discover this till years later. I was, those American, I mean, I don't know if any of you are old enough to remember those films. There was a sequence of films with Christina Ricci where she was the messed up kid in the American high school. Like in every single film, I was the Christina Ricci of the schools I was in. I was the one that was just in emotional crisis the whole time. So you get me sober, you add the destruction of years of drink and a bunch of other stuff, and I was in no fit state. So I've talked about what the solution is in terms of how it presents, what stops me from drinking. But this might be another bit of bad news. Uh, the solution, uh, as the big book presents it, and as I've applied it in my life, I almost don't want to say it because it's so horrific, is to live life on a completely different basis. Um, this was not good news to me. I want I wanted to be told how to live life the way I wanted to live it, but not be in permanent pain. Can I get to still believe everything I believe, think everything I do, think everything I think, and do everything I do, but be successful and be completely pain-free 24 hours a day? That was what I was looking for. And what AA has said to me is no, 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 entirely different basis. And as you kind of get into step two, there are some there's a chapter on it, we agnostics. And there's a great line: once confused and baffled by the seeming futility of existence, they show the underlying reasons why they were making heavy going of life. Leaving aside the drink question, they tell why living was so unsatisfactory. It talks later on about, in Family Afterwards, about a lifetime of frustration. I identify with this phrase hugely. The former basis did not work. It's another line from Working with Others. By the old basis not working, what I mean is this. I was almost permanently unhappy, and the only relief I got was being monged out. Or rage is a really good way of avoiding feeling certain things, and excitement. So I was depressed, numbed out completely, full of rage, or excited, and I'd bounce back between each of those, and it's exhausting. Um, it was me against the world. I was immensely lonely and didn't know how to connect. I knew how to show off. I knew how to get attention. I knew how to get people to rescue me until I got bored. Then I got rid of them and found a new person to rescue me, because the shine wears off. I mean, my life did not function on any meaningful level. It's turned out to be good news that the reason I was so unhappy was to do with me, not because of the world. If my problem was the world, then there was no solution. If the problem was me, then maybe something could change. And just what I mean by me there, the principle my sponsors shown me is there's nothing wrong with me. So the human being that I am, like the spirit contained somewhere inside me, is fine. But I've just got some really messed up thinking. I've got some messed up behavior. I've got some messed up beliefs. And what I've been told as well, and I think it's consistent with my experience, that my mind is like a mill, like a flour mill or a coffee mill. Whatever coffee beans you put in the top, the coffee, the powdered coffee you get out of the bottom is going to reflect the quality of the beans that you put in the top. If you could put good beans in the top, you'll get good coffee out of the bottom of the machine. I did not know this. And what I mean by that is I felt terrible the whole time. And I was told it's because of what you believe, what you think, and what you do. My first sponsor was American. He was a doctor as well as being an alcoholic. And I said, I'm depressed. He said, honey, your life is depressing. If I had your life, I'd be depressed too. Do you want to change your life? And he was right. By any measure of depression, boy, was I depressed. Clinically depressed. What does clinically depressed mean? It means that you satisfy the diagnostic criteria for depression. It doesn't tell you why you're depressed, it just tells you that you are depressed. And I was clinically depressed. I can report I'm no longer clinically depressed. Other people have different stories. I mean, I have a rougher time than a lot of people I know who are 27 years sober. I know people who are 27 years sober, 30 years sober, 35 years sober, who glide through life like swans. I do not glide through life like a swan. Um, you know, on building sites, they have those tubes that run from the top of a building to the bottom of a building, which they chuck them the broken masonry down. That's the sound I make as I slide through life. I get shit done, but it's not often elegant. I'm a lot happier than I used to be. I'm much more stable than I used to be, but I'm not like the poster boy for an easy life. But it's 1,000 times better than it used to be, and I'm no longer mentally ill. As I say, other people have different paths, other people have different journeys. All I can tell you is what appears to be true to me today. So, the solution that was offered to me was essentially the 12 steps, fellowship, service, the whole deal. And if I did that, my experience of life would change, because what I'm putting in at the top in terms of uh, beliefs, thinking, and behavior would produce a different result at the bottom, which is my experience, my emotional experience of life. There are some great, I know a couple of great texts and speakers who say we don't care how you feel, we care more about whether you live or die than your feelings. I think our feelings do matter. Um, because what is my life other than my experience of it? I could have a great life, but if I don't have a great experience of it, what's the point in having a great life? So my emotions do matter, but I can't control them directly. What I can learn to control is my thinking, my beliefs, my thinking, my behavior. And that's the subject matter of the solution of the remaining steps. Um, so before we get into some detail on steps 2 and 3, to sum up where we've got so far is I, I must never have another drink or drug or I'm toast. Um, I need a spiritual defense which basically pulls rank on my alcoholic mind. That means my entire life needs to be on a new basis. That's going to solve all the other stuff too, or at least make it livable with. And there are people that get to AA with an okay life. I was not one of them. But, friends of mine who are like that report that you work the program, what looked like a great life is totally blown out of the water by what you get in AA. So that covers the whole deal. So step 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Now at this point you're like, wait, sanity? You have not mentioned insanity before. Now you say you're implying, it almost looks like you're implying that I'm crazy. Now let's just look at the insanity. Sometimes people talk about the insanity being, dancing on tables and being late for work because you were drunk the night before. That's not it. Or even like emotional craziness, or I used to self-harm in front of other people, insanity. Well, maybe it is, but I don't think that's what they're talking about in step 2. Just an opinion. I think the insanity is, given my drinking history, to look at a drink and say that's a good idea. That's the insanity. And then going and having the drink, that's the sanity, is being restored to a position where I don't do that fundamentally crazy thing. You still get to be nuts in every other regard, but at least you won't have a drink or a drug. Um, uh, so, to get well, I don't even have to be particularly well wrapped mentally. I just have to be spiritually sound, which was a relief to me when I got sober because I did not. If you told me 27 years ago uh, what my life would look like now and how I feel about my life, I would not have believed you. I would not have believed a tenth of it. But I could believe that I could be sober because I could see it around me. So this restoration to sanity, when I was 10, I saw my brother drinking himself, as it turned out, to death. And I thought at the age of 10, I'll never do that. That was sanity. That's the sanity I get restored to in based on step 2. It talks about a power greater than myself. Um, Now, people get very hung up in step 2 on the God thing. People talk about, there's even a pamphlet now, the God word. It's almost a swear word. There are I used the word God by accident in a central London meeting once. I don't know what I was thinking, but I mentioned the word God and the person sitting immediately behind me, that detail is relevant. The person sitting immediately behind me said, when people mention God in AA, I want to stick pins in their eyes. He was behind me. I had no idea whether he had these pins with him or what these pins were. Were they small pins? Were they long pins? Um, and it's hopefully it'll be a relief that I'm not going to talk much about God, because I think it's a red herring in step 2 and step 3. It's the thing which you can go down a rabbit hole with that stuff and literally never come out. So be really careful thinking about God. By the way, some really smart people for the last few thousand years have been trying to figure it out and haven't conclusively. So don't think you're going to figure it out before you get to take step 2. So just take the pressure off. So what does it mean, a power greater than ourselves? What is power? I remember nothing from physics at school, except I know this one thing. Power is the ability to get work done. What was the power I lacked? The power to stay sober, number 1. The power to live effectively, the power to enjoy my life. Stay sober, live effectively, enjoy my life. I come to AA, I'm surrounded by people who did not have that power, did not have that ability, but had acquired it, who are in front of me, people who are sober, who you can just kind of tell that people's lives are okay and they're having a nice time. They don't need to tell you, they kind of announce themselves without having to say anything. So the power greater than myself, I mean, I'd been trying to be happy for 21 years and I'd miserably failed. So, you know, we'd already proved that I didn't have the power. The mere fact that other people had moved from not having power to be sober, to live effectively, to be happy. To me, that's the proof of the existence of a power greater than all of us. Now, what that power is, completely irrelevant. You can boil a kettle without knowing anything about physics. I've had a new gas boiler installed today. It's been 11 months from first needing a new gas boiler to having it. Let's not go into that whole, there's a story, but I'm not going to tell it. Anyway, I don't know how it works, but I know where the on button is. And this is the great thing about the higher power. It will work even if you don't understand it. I cannot believe in the gas boiler, but if I press the button, it comes on. My belief has got no impact at all on whether or not it works. So why do I care what I believe? I just need to take certain actions. the the little bit of that immense power in the universe that's visible in AA. So, people getting well, people staying sober, people having a nice day, people that have no business having a nice day, having a nice day. That's just one tiny corner of it, but that's totally enough. I don't know, for 5 years, 10 years in AA, maybe it's enough forever. I go to a morning meeting and there is someone there called Jackie who is so full of energy. If ever I feel down and I go to that meeting and I hear her energy, I think there is a power greater than myself working through her. How much more alive can you get than someone else's aliveness? So, to me, it's just you've proved it. You've proved there is a power greater than us. The question is, how do you access it? It's not there's a terrible thing. I'm going to express an opinion now. So take it for what it is. Um, Sometimes people say, you can't be too stupid to get this program, but you can be too clever. And I don't like that. It kind of suggests there's a category of people who are not going to get it. And I don't like that. I think anyone can get it. If you go to enough meetings, you'll see people smarter than you getting it. You'll see people who are not as smart as you getting it. You'll see people whose rock bottoms were lower, whose rock bottoms were higher, people with more problems, people with fewer problems. You discover yourself in the middle of the pack. So if it works for all the people around you on either side, it's going to work for you. Why would it not work for you? That's the real question. Never ask, why will it work for me? Presume if it works for millions of people, why will it not work for me? And then people will say, well, this happened and that happened. And if you have a network in AA, you say, hey, do you know anyone who suffered X, Y, and Z? And eventually you'll find someone who did, and it turns out not to be a block to sobriety. So step 2 to me is it's not about God. It's about observing that this program works for other people if they take certain actions. The program is the actions. The meetings are not, these new blocks of flats where there's a marketing suite on the ground floor, which is like the show flat. Meetings, I think, are the marketing suite for AA. AA is the experience I have inside myself by taking some actions with you that I learn about when I'm in the meetings. So it's like the difference between a travel agency and the holiday. The meetings are like the travel agency. They're not the destination. They're not Torremolinos. If you want to go to Torremolinos, I quite like Torremolinos. If you want to go to Torremolinos, you have to get on a plane and go to Torremolinos with a mask on. And if you want a spiritual awakening, yeah, I mean, you might have to go to a meeting to get the information, to get a sponsor, to get a bunch of friends. I mean, I needed to talk to, maybe 10 to 15 people a day in my first year, just not to commit suicide. I was kind of on the edge a little bit. So, you have to go to meetings to find these people. That's where they're hiding all the sober people, is at the meetings. But it's not the solution. The solution is the program. You get to do that yourself with some guidance from other people. So step 2, to sum up step 2, is I'm really screwed. I need an entirely different way of living. People say it sometimes AA is brainwashing. My brain needed washing. It was dirty in more ways than one. I needed a whole solution. I needed a solution that was bigger than the sum total of all my problems. And lo and behold, ta-da! There's a fellowship full of people with the solution. And this is the amazing thing. Sometimes you go to religious institutions or organizations, and there are people who are just so in the sunlight of the spirit. And you say, how do you do it? And they go, oh, well, God loves me. And you're like, no. Can you give me something more concrete than that? No, I just know God. Okay, so you can't even have a conversation. You're really happy for them that that is the case, but you go to someone in AA and they say, right, you need to do these things. And now you're in business. Now you're cooking with gas because now you have something you can literally start doing today. So there's no people say, I don't know how it works. I know how it works. They wrote it down, so we didn't have to figure it out. It's in the chapter, cunningly disguised as how it works. There you go. That's where it is. Why it works, that's a different question, but how it works is really clear. You take a few simple actions. So, this brings us to step 3. Um, so step 3 is really uh, taking the plunge. Once you've decided that you've got a terrible problem, you can't postpone or evade it. There is a solution. The solution is all around you. You know exactly what to do because there are people who are able to tell you exactly what to do. There's nothing left. There's nothing left because I don't know if you've seen Independence Day. I saw it 3 times in the cinema when it came out. Um, there's a bit where I think, I don't know, Air Force One or something is taking off and Washington is being zapped by this ray from the spacecraft. It seemed really modern at the time. It sounds really old fashioned now, but anyway. So, Air Force One is taking off and Washington is being zapped. It's like a nuclear blast. And the flames they can look outside the windows of the plane that is taking off and the flames are almost catching them up. That's the feeling just before you take step 3. Kind of, I better take step 3 soon or the flames of my alcoholism are going to get me. But there are a couple of philosophical points here which I'm going to introduce from pages 60 to 62 because you'd think at this point it would say, right, let's get on with it. You know, we're an alcoholic. There is a solution. We know what the solution is. Let's take the plunge. And it says, no, 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 no. We've got a few things we need to get straight first before we take step 3. And it's pages 60 to 62. And there isn't time to go through every line. Every line is worth going through on those pages. But the key line is this. Is he not a victim of the delusion that he can wrest happiness and satisfaction from this world if he only manages well? To translate that into Timmy's, what that means to me is, even if I got my own way, I wouldn't be happy. And that's kind of alarming because if you think, well, if getting my own way is not going to make me happy, what is? And that point kind of does need to be proved in a way. What do you mean getting my own way won't make me happy? Have you ever had those romantic relationships which started so well? They tick all the boxes. And, for the first week or month or year, it's amazing. And within 2 years, you want to have them arrested. Where did it go? What went wrong? The dream job. Ask anyone who says, oh, I've just got a dream job. Ask them like 3 years later, mid-February, how that dream job's going. You'll get punched in the face. I walk up and down Hoxton Street. People of all ages. It's not like the older people who've got their own way more often than the younger people who are still en route look super happy. The older people do not look happier than the younger people. You walk around. I've got a friend who does up people's houses in Kensington and Mayfair, where, people famously are very entitled, have everything they want, order everyone around. He said, are they happy? I said to him, are they happier than all the people in Luton or wherever he lives? And he says, no, they're worse. They're more grumpy. They're more just like the tiniest thing that doesn't go their way. They can't handle it. The world is, exhibit A in the case is the way the world is. How many people have got stuff going their way and they're still not happy? Like, out of 1,000 things which could go a person's way, 999 are going that way. People 4 centuries ago would look at our lives today and wonder why anyone is depressed, because we've solved, almost every single problem that was on the planet 400 years ago. And yet, people are depressed, people are anxious. No one talks to anyone else. Angry, holding placards. Sometimes you need to hold a placard, but you get that. But you can hold a placard peacefully or angrily. So you have to go through the work yourself to realize, oh my God, every dream that ever came true was ashes in my mouth, because I just get another dream. When this happens, I'll be okay. When I get the gas boiler, I'm going to be okay. I've got the gas boiler. I'm no different now. I have the gas boiler. My mind is looking for the next thing that needs to be fixed. So, long story short, you might as well just throw the towel in. When I was 35, someone said to me, "Are you happier? Are you happy?" And I said, "I'm happier than I used to be." And he said, "No, no, no, no. Different question. Are you happy?" I said, "Well, no. Better, but there's stuff that I'm not happy about." He said, "How long have you been trying to get your own way?" I said, 35 years. He said, "When did you think your plan was going to kick in? What, another 6 months is going to make it work? Seriously? You give it up." So you've already decided you need a higher power in order just not to die of alcoholism, but then maybe try a different way of living, because it might even work. So how do you take step 3? Novel idea. People say, I'm going to try and keep this as simple as possible. People say, you got to get out of the driving seat. I think you've got to get into the driving seat and take charge of your life. But where are you getting the information from? Your satellite navigation system, is it tuned into your ego, or is it tuned into God? Where's the fuel? Getting, or is the fuel coming from God, which is giving, giving, giving? And so when I was drinking, I was in the driving seat. Now I'm sober, I'm in the driving seat. But I have to have a different source of information and a different source of power. In step 11, it says praying only for knowledge of God's will for us. That's the satellite navigation system, and the power to carry that out. That's the petrol in the engine. And this is the freedom. Now, you don't get to decide where you go. The satellite navigation system decides that. But this is where I had to trust that anything was better than where I was. And there are lots of images the big book uses. My favorite one is employer and employee. So in taking step 3, I get to turn up at my higher power's office in the morning, say, "What do you want me to do today?" That's it. And trust that everything else will work out. It's been my experience that everything does work out. And I've got to keep my focus, according to step 3, on a couple of things. Stay close to God, perform his work well. What is staying close to God? Prayer, meditation, contemplation, music which uplifts you, nature, animals, kids, anything with life will connect me to God. Perform his work well. My friend Sel talks about, the greatest ambition in AA is to be another bozo on the bus. Just get on with what's in front of you today. Stop fussing about what everyone else is doing or not doing. Mind my own business. Keep my big fat mouth shut. And by the way, get on with the rest of the steps and get on with it quickly. How do you actually take step 3? You adopt this position. God's in charge, I'm the employee, and you say to anyone else, "Hard luck, I'm working for the boss now." Spiritual Paul used to say, it's better to be a people pleaser than a God pleaser, because it's better to be a God pleaser than a people pleaser, because there's only one of him. So you just have to, all you have to do is, if you mess up, you know, God forgives you, apparently. So, what's to lose? So, step 3, you say the prayer, you adopt this position that the higher power is in charge. Doesn't matter what you think it is, just trust it's there. Talk to it like a friend. You talk to a computer by typing words in it. It's no sillier than that. The computer can't understand the words you're saying the way we understand words, but you still use words with the computer. Same with God. If you can't understand why God can understand words, don't worry. Same thing as with a computer. It's the way we communicate, and it'll work. As I say, if you get on with steps 4 through 9, which is what we're going to talk about next week, I'm going to stop there. Thanks for listening.